Hello children, welcome you all once again to my YouTube channel. Today let's read another lesson from your English textbook, An Alien Hand, NCERT. Lesson number 7, and the title of the lesson is Chandni. Abbu Khan kept goats as pets. He loved his goats, but they left him one by one. He bought a young pretty goat and called her Chandni. From this given feature, at least we come to know that the story is about a person named Abbu Khan, and he used to keep pets, the gods, as pets, and they left him one by one. And there is a young pretty goat in the story which Abbu Khan bought and called her Chandni. So let's read the story and find out more about it. Once upon a time, there lived an old man in Almora. He was popularly known as Abbu Khan. He lived all alone except for a few goats, which he always kept as pets. He gave his goats funny names such as Kalua, Mungia, or Gujri. He would take them out for grazing during the day and talk to them as one talks to one's own children at night. He would bring them back to his little hut and put a string round the neck of each goat. Poor Abbu Khan was a little unlucky in the matter of his goats. Very often at night, one of the goats would pull at the string till it broke loose, and then would disappear in the hills beyond. Goats in hilly regions had been tied to trees or poles. They loved their freedom. Abbu Khan's goats were of the best hill breed. They too loved their freedom. So whenever they got a chance, they would run away only to get killed by an old wolf who lived in the hills. Whenever one of his goats disappeared, Abbu Khan was very sad. He did not understand why even the juiciest grass and grains that he gave them, and all the love that he showered on them, would not stop these unfortunate goats from running straight into the jaws of death. Are these gods mad? He wondered, or was it their love for freedom? But freedom meant struggle, hardship, even that. Abbu Khan couldn't solve the mystery. One day, when all his gods had left him, Abbu Khan said to himself, "No more gods in my house ever again. I may yet live for a few more years, but I will live without gods." However, the poor old man was terribly lonely. He simply could not do without his pets. Very soon he bought a young goat. He thought, "A young goat will stay with me much longer. She will soon begin to love me as well as the food I give her every day. She will never want to go to the hills." And he laughed with joy. The new goat was very pretty. She was white as snow and had two little horns on her little head and a pair of gleaming red eyes. She had a friendly temperament and would listen to Abbu Khan's tales with a lot of interest and affection. Abbu Khan called her Chandni, which means moonlight. He loved Chandni and would narrate to her stories of all his friends who were dead and gone. Several years passed, Chandni was still there. Abbu Khan believed that Chandni would never leave his compound for the free and fresh air of the hills beyond. Alas, he was mistaken again. And that is the story, first part. Comprehension check now. Why did Abbu Khan's gods want to run away? What happened to them in the hills? Like all hilly gods, Abbu Khan's gods also loved freedom. So they wanted to run away. But you see, in the hills, they were killed by an old wolf. Abbu Khan said, "No more gods in my house ever again." Then he changed his mind. Why? Abbu Khan was so lonely that he could not do without his pets. That is why he changed his mind. Why did he buy a young goat? Abbu Khan thought that a young goat would stay with him much longer. He would give her food every day, so she would begin to love him. She would never want to go to the hills. Thinking this, Abbu Khan bought a young goat. Now let's move on to the next part. Like other gods, Chandni too missed the hills. She told Abbu Khan she must have her freedom. The story of the dangerous wolf in the forest did not discourage Chandni. Every morning, Chandni watched the hilltops bathe in the sunlight. How beautiful those hills are! She thought how refreshing the breeze that blows through them, and how lovely to run across those green fields. She ran towards the hills but had to stop with a jerk. The rope around her neck wouldn't let her go any further. How she hated that rope! She stopped eating the green grass Abbu Khan brought for her, nor did she listen to his stories with interest and affection. She lost her appetite, grew very thin, and stared moodily at the hilltops bathed in sunlight. Abbu Khan did not understand Chandni's anguish. At last, she decided to speak to him frankly. "Dear Abbu Khan," she said, "let me go to the hills, please. If I stay on in your compound, I will die." Now Abbu Khan understood Chandni's problem, but it made him very unhappy. The ardent pot which contained Chandni's breakfast fell from his hands and broke into 1,000 pieces. "Why do you want to leave me, Chandni?" Abbu Khan asked. "I want to go to the hills," Chandni answered. "Don't you like the food here? I give you tastier food and a much longer rope." "No, thank you. Let me go to the hills." "Do you realize the risk you are running, you obstinate creatures? There is a dangerous wolf in the hills. He will eat you up." Abbu Khan did his best to warn her. Chandni answered, "God has given me a pair of horns. I will fight the wolf." "Fight the wolf, indeed. Have you forgotten the story of your sister Kalua, who was the size of a big deer? She fought the wolf through the night but was killed in the morning." Abbu Khan narrated Kalua's story for the 15th time. To all this, Chandni had only one thing to say: "I want to go to the hills." Abbu Khan got very annoyed. He thundered, "You are not going anywhere. From today you will live in a small hut and not move about freely in the compound. Ungrateful as you are, you must still be saved from the wolf." He pushed her into a small hut and shut the door. but he forgot to close the small window at the back. The same night Chandni met that window, her passage to freedom. Again, comprehension check. Why did Chandni had the rope round her neck? Chandni refused to join the group. See. As you see, Chandni was a wild goat, and like any wild goat, Chandni wanted to run away to enjoy the beauty and freshness of the hills. But the raft around her neck would not let her go, so she hated the raft. In short, she doesn't belong to any group of goats which are domestic or tamed. Rather, the spirit of the hill gods push Chandni to head that raft and push towards the love of her freedom. Now Abbu Khan understood Chandni's problem. What was Chandni's problem? Chandni felt restricted in Abbu Khan's compound. She wanted to go to the hills, but she could not. This was her problem. Abbu Khan pushed Chandni into a small hut. This shows that he was cruel, loved her, and wanted to save her life. 3 was selfish. Out of these 3 options, Roman number 2, loved her and wanted to save her life, is the correct option. Moving on. Next part. Chandni went back to the hills. She knew the wolf was somewhere there. She was ready to put up a good fight. Chandni reached the hills. It seemed to her that the old hills were standing in a row to welcome her. She felt like a child meeting her parents after years of separation. Wherever she went, the tall grass rose to embrace her. The flowers bloomed to amuse her, and the wind sang an endless song of welcome. How different all this was from her past. In the prison house of Abbu Khan's compound, it was the happiest day in the Chandni's life. That day she played for hours on the grassy slopes of the hills. She met a herd of wild goats who asked her to join their group, but Chandni politely refused. She wanted to enjoy her new freedom all by herself. The sun disappeared behind the hills, and soon darkness enveloped the grass, the flowers and the trees. The wind stopped blowing, and there was stillness all round except for a strange sound which was coming from the bushes. The sound was like a grunt. What was it? It wasn't Abbu Khan's voice calling her back to the compound, nor was it the voice of another god. Then Chandni thought of the dangerous wolf who lived in the hills. She felt scared. Should she go back to the safety of Abbu Khan's hut? No, she said to herself. That in an open field is far better than life in a small hut. The wolf had come out of the bushes and was staring greedily at Chandni. His eyes were shining like burning coals in the darkness. He seemed in no hurry. He knew the new god was his. The wolf and the god sized up each other. The wolf was big and ferocious, whereas the god, although healthy, was small. But small is not weak. Chandni stood firm on her legs, head slightly bent and horn jutting out. She was a picture of courage. She looked like a brave soldier, ready to fight a treacherous enemy. I must put up a good fight, Chandni thought. Success or failure is a matter of luck or chance. The fight began. It went on through the night. The moon, which had been watching the fight, began to grow pale and suddenly hide behind the clouds. The stars also began to disappear one by one. A faint light appeared in the east, and the morning call for prayers came from a distant mosque. The first rays of the sun saw Chandni lying on the ground. She was completely soaked in blood. The wolf, tired and sleepy, was getting ready to devour her. An assembly of birds perched on top of a tree nearby was debating the result of the fight. "Who is the winner?" one of them asked. "The wolf, of course," most of them said. A wise old bird declaimed with confidence, "Chandni is the winner." Zakir Husain and adaptation. And we have another comprehension check. Why did Chandni refuse to join the group of wild goats? Chandni refused to join the groups of wild goats because she wanted to enjoy her newly found freedom all by herself. Chandni fought the wolf because she, option 1, was stronger than the wolf, 2, hated the wolf, 3, had to retain her freedom at all cost. Roman number 3, had to retain her freedom at all cost. Exercises. Discuss the following topics in groups. 1. Why did the wise old bird say Chandni is the winner? The wise old bird said this because Chandni had put up a brave fight to save her freedom. 2. Death is an open field. Death in an open field is better than life in a small hut. Chandni said to herself, "Was it the right decision? Give reasons for your answer." Yes, her decision was right. She hated captivity. She preferred to die for freedom than to live in captivity. For her, freedom was life, so she gave her life for freedom. Freedom is life. Discuss this with reference to Chandni and I want something in a cage. Okay. Freedom is the most precious thing in life. Chandni loved freedom. She got it at the cost of her own life. The stranger in the lesson, "I want something in a cage," spent all his money to buy freedom for the caged birds. Now let's have a discussion on this. Chandni got out of the hut through a small window. Abbu Khan had forgotten to shut it. See here, you can see it. Picture. Clearly, Chandni reached the hills. They seemed to her standing in a row to greet her. She felt like a child who was meeting her parents after a long separation. Tall grass rose to embrace her and the flowers bloomed to amuse her. The wind sang an endless song of welcome. It was the happiest day in Chandni's life. See, Chandni was white as snow. She had a little hat with 2 little horns on it. Her eyes were gleaming red. She had a friendly temperament. See. The Chandni was very pretty and good-tempered. And Abbu Khan tried his best to discourage Chandni from fighting the wolf by telling her the stories of another god, Kalua. This god, he told her, was the size of a big deer. She had given a tough fight to the wolf but was killed in the morning. So this story is about an old man, Abbu Khan, who lived in Almora. He kept goats as pets and gave them funny names like Kalua, Mungia, or Gujri. She took care of his goats like his children, but often his goats broke their strings and would disappear in the hills to be eaten by an old wolf. Abbu Khan was very sad. He could not understand the reason behind his goats' plight. He wanted to save them, but the gods were ready to embrace death for the sake of freedom. He tried to leave the lawn but could not do so. He bought a young goat, white as snow with red eyes. This goat was named Chandni. Abbu Khan loved her and fed her well. He also narrated her stories of his old gods. But as Chandni grew old, she also started dreaming of beautiful hills and green fields. She stopped eating the grass that Abbu Khan gave her and grew very weak. When Abbu Khan asked the reason, she told him that she wanted to go to the hills. Abbu promised her tastier food and also warned her of the dangers of the wolf in the hills. But Chandni still insisted on going. One day, Chandni escaped through the window from the small hut in which she was imprisoned. Throughout the day, Chandni enjoyed the hills and the green grass. Soon, the night came and the wolf appeared from the bush. She still did not run back to the safety of Abbu Khan's hut and decided to fight the wolf with her horns. She fought bravely till the morning. But then died in the morning. The birds came out and found Chandni dead. The birds commented that Chandni was a loser, but a wise old bird declared that Chandni was in fact a winner.